Hi, and welcome to another Film 5.0 podcast. My name is Linda Gasco, and I am here with my co-host and co-founder of Film 5.0, the one and only Steve Hiller. In today's episode, we have another one and only Mr. Guido Cavaciuti, who I've known and Steve known since he's been about 10. And he is now in the film business. He started as a trainee. He's been shooting film, and he just finished a feature film called Comandante. And we're going to hear a little bit about his rise, because he's an up-and-comer. He's wanting to shoot and wants to do more, and people need to hear his story and what's taken place. So, Guido, it's so good to have you. It's been such a long time since we've seen you. You look so handsome.
Yeah, you didn't have a mustache then.
Yeah, he didn't, did he?
Certainly didn't have a beard. No. I probably still look 10 without it, hence why I keep it.
That'd be nice. I wish I could do that.
That's not bad. Do I want to look older? Keep it. If I want to look younger, go for a younger job? Hey, nice, nice. Okay, so some of the things that Guido has worked on, and let's say that Guido's father is Peter Cavaciuti. He is a world-class camera operator. And I really mean world-class because the guy's been everywhere. Yeah. And Steadicam operator. And that's how Guido and I met, and Steve and I met Guido, is because his dad was on The Hunted, and that's where we met Peter. And Peter is a good friend of ours. So, so 1917. That's not bad. Bohemian Rhapsody, Jurassic World.
Oh, did you work on Bohemian Rhapsody too? Oh, that's cool.
I certainly did. Yeah, that was that was the film that put hairs on my chest, shall we say? It was a great job, but
yeah, that's an interesting film. One. Interesting film for sure. It's just, 1917 obviously was too.
Yeah,
very physical. So.
He's done quite a lot of short films, and that's the cool thing. Guido is a good example because he's not only working on feature films. When he's not, he's constantly involved in shooting and doing things and progressing his career. So I think one of the things we want to tell young people that are listening and watching our podcast and Film 5.0 is, you have to make it for yourself, right? You have to be the one to be your own motivator and say, okay, what can I do? Because the industry is exploding, and it's also changing because of the strike. We always tell people, listen, take things into your own hands. What can you be producing and doing? And you're a really good example of it.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I think from right back in my trainee days, I'd always pushed myself to make my own stuff, and that's as much as sometimes we malign the rise of digital, that's something that I'm very thankful for, because it absolutely leveled the playing field. So suddenly you could pick up a relatively cheap camera and get a fantastic image out of it, and I was very fortunate at the start of my career that I managed to, my first trainee job was the Andy Serkis's Jungle Book with a fantastic film crew, and through that I made connections at Arri Rental, and straight away after that I thought, God, I want to make a film with all this cool kit, and I got talking to the lovely Simon Surtees, who's one of the marketing executives at Arri, and he said, well, let us know and we'll give you a hand. So straight away I thought, great, let's go and make some stuff, let's meet some directors, let's do some stuff. I've never been one to sit on my hands, so I always like making things. I came from avoiding the film industry as a kid, because you want to do not what your parents do. I came from I originally started doing theatre, and doing low budget theatre, you're just doing things with what you have. So
yeah, my kids avoided the industry too. They're all 40-ish now, but the reason they did is because they said I was gone so much when they were little. I mean, you have the advantage now that you don't have young children, but they were little and I was always gone, so that sat with them.
Absolutely.
I remember.
No, go ahead.
I remember early on talking with your dad, and I said, well, what do you think Guido's going to be doing? And you actually went to the Fringe Festival with some friends, right?
So, yeah, absolutely.
he told me about that, and I said, so what do you think Guido's going to do? And he goes, I think he's going into film. He said he's got, a lot of instincts, and he loves that kind of thing. And I said, does that worry you? And he said, I want Guido to do what makes Guido happy.
Oh, yeah,
so,
do what you exactly.
Yeah, so he saw it.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I mean, Dad was always great like that. I could kind of tell that he'd kind of see me do film-related stuff and kind of go, okay, yeah, and he would be secretly happy about it. But he was, he never really pushed me. Although, I always kind of joke that I never got into the film industry directly through him. It's a bit of a funny story. I'm in, getting ready for bed one night, and he was working on a film called Now You See Me Too, and they just started a load of night shoots, and they were in need of an extra trainee, couldn't find anyone, industry's busy, they couldn't get anyone, and it was just someone to look after a broadcast camera. They had 4 or 5 of them running. I think it was the end of the movie with a plane, and he said, "Can't find a trainee, you're coming to work with me." So for the next 2 weeks. I'd been on film sets my whole life, but I'd never worked on one. So, I turn up, I'm in charge of this camera, and, I had an altercation with the first AD as soon as I walked on because he wanted to run more cameras, and I was there going, wrong guy, and I forever bless Peter Deming, DOP, for having my back. But yeah, and I did those 2 weeks, really enjoyed it, didn't really think anything of it, and then about a month later, I met a fantastic focus puller called Dave Cousins in a nightclub in Soho, out with some friends, and he was with a mutual friend and had a great night out, didn't really think much of it, and thought, oh, he's in the film industry, that's cool. And then about a month later, I get a call from Dave saying, oh, hi, Guido, I'm looking for a camera trainee for Jungle Book, and a mutual friend had you on Now You See Me Too and thought you were cool, do you fancy doing it? I thought, well, all right, I'm a bit between jobs, let's give it a go. And then I never looked back, and that was it.
Where did they film that?
So it was oddly enough, both Warner Brothers and Disney decided to make Jungle Book movies at the same time. No. So the Warner Brothers one was made, the Disney one I think was made in the US, and then the Mowgli, as it's now called, is on Netflix, which was originally made by Warner Brothers. That was at Leavesden. Amazing sets. I mean, it was like, they were keeping the stages at 40 degrees, and they're proper jungle plants and rivers and waterfalls. I mean, it was an amazing first film to be on. It really was incredible.
That's cool. We actually did Jungle Book here back in the early mid-90s.
In the 90s,
yeah. They started in India, and then Steve and I jumped on when they came to the States. So we had a taste of that.
John Cleese was in that. It was kind of cool.
Yeah,
it was all live action. I know there's been a couple of animated versions of it, but that was good.
Yeah. So and everybody gets their start a little differently, but you have to have the work ethic, right? And I think that's one thing that Steve and I keep trying to tell young people when we do seminars and talks is, it's an industry where you learn from others. There's no book. There's no manual. You learn from the older people and the people around you, but you got to have the work ethic, right? You got to put in the time.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, I get back in my assisting days that I say as if they were a long time ago. in my days as a camera assistant, that I'd get asked a lot, and I'd get emails, kind of 2-3 emails a week from people who are wanting to get in as camera trainees, and they'd say kind of what do I need to learn? What do I need to do? Aside from all the questions of how do I get in, a lot of it was, what do I do when I'm on set? How do I learn? And I always used to say, it's attitude. You get a direction, you do something. You get it wrong, fine, no worries. You get it wrong a second time, okay, well maybe you get it wrong a third time, and now I'm going, okay, now you're just annoying me. And that's always the thing. It's the being able to pick things up, and it's if you're standing on set as a trainee and you're not busy, something's wrong. You've got to go, what am I doing next? Do I need to clean the mag liners? Do I need to walk?
Yeah, that's a good analogy. If you're like, what do we always say? Don't come back chewing. Don't come back from craft service eating something.
Yeah. Well, exactly. I mean, there's if you're thinking ahead, which is what we're supposed to be doing, right? We're supposed to be preparing and getting ready and having things at hand. There's always something to do, except when, cameras are rolling. Then everybody needs to not be. But it's, that work ethic of going, okay, well, I see that needs to be done. Do I wait for somebody to tell me, or do I do it? Do I take that initiative? And it's the initiative, right?
Absolutely.
Well,
the initiative is the main one. Yeah, absolutely. Go ahead.
well, just recognizing that when you start recognizing that something does need to be done, like that. I mean, that you identify that something that needs to be done. That's a big deal. So because you're paying attention. So.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, now when I graduated, I went to film school back in the '70s, but now I'm gonna bring up the word nepotism. But when I finished film school, people said, well, you can't get in the film business because you're not related to anybody. And I go, first of all, that's totally not true. I said, second of all, that's not a bad thing because a lot of the issues with being born into it was that you have to step up even more than the next guy does because people are going to say, well, you got here because you're dead. Well, you have to prove to them that I got here because I wanted to be here and I understand this business. So it's more of an issue being born into it, sometimes harder than not being, but for that reason. And we were talking about set etiquette and all that stuff the other day when Linda and I were talking. I said, well, Guido learned that because he was on sets and he learned the old way and he understands that. So there's a big advantage to that. Like film school is nice and all, but like when people use nepotism as a bad word, I said that's bullshit. That's not correct. It can be a real advantage for a lot of reasons. So anyway, that's my spin on that. So.
No, I mean, I absolutely, and I still feel it now. To be honest, that I'm always anxious and kind of concerned about having a career that is separate from my father's. And when I started as a trainee, I made a real point of not working with him and not work. I used to drive him mad. He'd offer me jobs, and I'd go, no, I'm going to go and do this crappy low budget film or this commercial or whatever, and not work with you. And he'd go, but this is 6 months of work, and I'd go, yeah, no worries. But it was a really good thing, and it was and something that kind of helped me out a lot. Kind of at the time drove me a little bit mad was that I did the Jungle Book and then I didn't get onto the next film because the DP on the film, it was the same team trainee that he wanted, and at the time I was super disappointed because I thought I'm going to fall out of step with the team and they're all great and now I'm kind of out in the wilderness on my own. But it actually was brilliant because it meant that I spent the next 6 months working with everyone, doing dailies here, dailies there, commercials, working on all sorts of different things, and it meant that I got my name out there on my own,
right?
Without having Dad's name.
The
networking, I'm always conscious.
The networking is everything, so it really is.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
But I do have to say that having worked for your dad as his assistant, his second, and dealing with the Steadicam and all that, he wouldn't ask you out there and push you to work, especially with him, if he didn't know your work ethic, because he's on top of it. He's ready, he's prepared, and he wouldn't ask you to be on something with him if he didn't think.
If he didn't, he knew. He recognized that you'd be there.
Yeah, he recognized that.
So. Yeah, I mean, with Dad, it's either you're on it or you don't survive. There's no two ways with him, and
that's true.
And he expects a lot of his assistants. He's particularly with Steadicam. He's someone who wants to walk up to the rig and it's ready. There's no I'm going to balance it or this. It's just he walks up, he takes it and goes. That's it. If it's not ready.
Linda learned that. She learned that. She learned that.
He goes, it's not balanced. I go, it's not mine. And he goes, well, but I would really like it to be balanced. I'm like, okay. So I could get it there, and then he would put it up on on the Steadicam, and he'd give me that look to the side that he would do, and I was like, I did the best I could. You have to finesse it.
But you learned it all, and he appreciated that. It didn't take long to get
exactly.
And that is something he does appreciate. Actually, he does. Which is something that I tried. There's nothing better than having someone who's working underneath you. And when you watch them grow and you watch it from afar and you go, that's great. That's great. Yeah. And that is something that Pete is very good at, is helping people to develop.
What do you call him on set?
Yeah. Pete, absolutely. It's gone into my personal life as well. It's funny. I noticed it earlier when I was saying father and dad that now feels almost unnatural to me. But I'm
really
used to calling him Pete. Yeah, absolutely.
But you don't do that to your mama, do you?
Oh, absolutely. I don't speak to her, and it's only Italian for her.
You mean call your mom Pete? No, I wouldn't do that either.
The lovely Rosa. Yeah. No, she's wonderful. I love her so much. And Nina, we got to say the word Nina too, because she's an amazing artist. Amazing,
phenomenal. Absolutely
it's like this really good-looking family that's really talented. Gosh, I wish I was in one of those.
What? Yeah, tell me
You're part
about
of the family, Linda. Come on.
What?
I said you're part of the family. Come on, you make us better.
Yeah, there you go. That's a compliment. So.
I feel so good. No, I love.
Certainly keep Dad on his toes, so that's good.
Oh, I love stirring that pot. Don't tell him that. He won't see this before his airs. So, no, he's great. He's absolutely. Well, we have Manchester United, right, as another uniting factor. So, yeah, it's all.
The less we talk about them this season, the better.
Oh, I know. I'm so sorry. I'm surprised Tag is still there. Anyway, that's all I'm saying.
I'd give anything to sit at one of those games.
Oh my God! Right.
I watch it on TV, but I'd give anything to be there. So.
Yes.
Hey, come over. We've got tickets. We can bring them. Come over.
I'm ready.
I don't know the songs. I don't know anything, but I'll learn them because it just looks like it's a blast. So yes, we're going to take you up on that at some point.
Yeah.
Okay, so all right, so you do this movie. How did you get this last movie? How did that all work out?
So, I had just finished a film called The Red, White, the Royal Blue that has just come out. A wonderful, wonderful film, both to work on and resulting, but a really brave topic and really important. And Matthew, the director, was lovely, really trusted us. It was great. I ended up shooting second units and stuff. It was fantastic. Where I did break my cardinal rule of not working with Pete. He was the A camera on that, and I was the B camera operator, and with the lovely Stephen Goldblatt.
Yeah, I was going to say that'd be great. That'd be great.
He put a lot of trust in us and in me particularly, and I'm forever grateful to him.
That's great
for that opportunity. It was lovely. So we just finished that, and I ended up on a job in Venice. Awful, horrendous place.
Oh,
yeah, right. Tell me about it.
With a fantastic and wonderful English DP called Angus Hudson, who shoots a lot with Eduardo Ponti, who's the son of lovely Sophia Loren. It was a pre-shoot for a film they were supposed to be shooting at the start of the year. I ended up in a boat, on the judges' boat on the Venice Regatta, handheld on my own, shooting judges and Italians hitting each other with oars. It was very lovely. And on that job, one of the other operators, who was a friend of Eduardo's, a lovely chap called Ferran Paredes Rubio, is the DP of Comandante. So we bonded over that film, and each morning at breakfast he'd be telling me about this crazy Italian job on a submarine with all this crazy replica of this submarine, and I'd sit there going, God, that sounds awful.
Was that a period film? Was that period?
Yeah, World War II, based in World War II.
That. Obviously it would have to be somewhat period, but World War II, that's interesting. Was this
Yeah, absolutely.
Was this what country? A British submarine or English?
No, so it was an Italian submarine.
Oh, that's cool.
I didn't know that at the start of World War II, Italy had one of the biggest, I think maybe even the biggest submarine fleet in the...
No, I didn't know that.
It had about 120 submarines. I think only 8 or 9 survived the war.
Whoa, I didn't know that either.
As with anything Italian, they were way too big, way too fancy, and not particularly reliable.
I think somebody said they had like the biggest battleship at the beginning of the war too, something. And then all those ships, they all wound up going to Morocco to sit out the war. But I'd heard that too, that they had a huge fleet of ships.
Very possible, but the film is about. It's a true story about an Italian submarine commander called Todaro, who was famous for sinking ships and then rescuing all the survivors and towing them back to land, which is not obviously what the Nazis would do. So his whole spiel was that I wage war against ships, not against men.
Bad people, that's cool. Well, I'd love to see that. Would that be? Will I be able to see that here, or is that going to be everywhere?
I believe it's got an Italian release, but I also believe I might be completely wrong about this, but I believe Paramount are involved somehow.
Oh, that sounds amazing. So.
Yeah, whether it's going to be a streamer, I'm not sure, but it comes out at the end of the month in Italy.
Wow.
It sounds amazing.
That sounds really cool. Well, anything submarine, it had to be moist.
It was certainly wet. Yeah, it was certainly wet. And we had these amazing water cannons made by a fantastic Belgian SFX team that would fire. I think it was 1,000 litres of seawater every 45 seconds.
Whoa!
Yeah, which was so 50-foot techno head with all this tracking fancy VFX stuff that was going on to help the VFX team in post. And so it was a bit of a battle between the camera team and the director going, the director saying, I want the camera here, and me going, great, well, we can do one take of that and then we're all going home. So what do we really want to do?
Yeah, electronics and rain.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly, yeah.
Well, that's beyond rain, though. So now, did they have I assume a lot of that was on a set, right? Or not?
Well, they built a 73-meter replica to scale of the submarine. It was a pretty astounding thing. The submarine was called the Cappellini. We had it floated in a military dock down in Taranto.
Oh wow,
that's cool.
Yeah, it was pretty amazing. And then
amazing.
We did 2 or 3 months of exteriors on that, Technocrane, and then some handheld work in and around the submarine, and then we went to Rome and we did all the interiors at Cinecittà. In Rome.
I saw, I think you had posted on your Instagram, it was a picture of a really wide shot of you on the dolly and a couple people on the bridge or the front of the sub, and all I saw was rain and it was backlit. It was a beautiful picture. But I was like, having been in camera, it's like, oh, I feel for you, Guido, and I remember texting with your dad, and he goes, "Yeah, Guido's in the thick of it."
Yeah, I mean, it was summer. It was summer in Italy, so that's not too bad.
Yeah, it was. You know what? We got super lucky with the weather, aside from a couple of horrendous stormy nights that were a bit full on, and it was all. Most of the exteriors were night shoots.
Oh my!
So it was a lot of windy, because we were right by the coast as well. The weather would just change like that. The sea would go from being completely flat to chaos. But Ferran did it's an amazing looking film. The interiors particularly, he did a fantastic job. Really
stills I saw of it, not only yours, but the ones that they have on IMDb, it looks absolutely amazing.
I have to look at that. I haven't seen that.
Yeah, Ferran did a stunning job. It really, because you can imagine in a submarine, it was full on. Part of the film is that the submarine is packed as well. It's so packed that they can't dive. They've got people above, and if they dive, they're going to the people are going to drown up top. So it really. You mean
when they would rescue people, they'd have people on top? Oh.
Wow.
Yeah, it was so full. They had people in the conning tower, so they're not able to dive. And I'm saying too much already. I'm giving the film away. But
No. But it's something you don't think about.
It still makes me want to see it even more. So.
Yeah.
It's not giving away.
Right.
That's amazing.
The set, when you did interiors, was that on a gimbal like they did Hunt for Red October, or how did they do that?
No, sadly not. We would have loved. It would have been fantastic. We had a couple of sequences where it lifts and it moves. We sadly didn't have the means to do a fully rigged out gimbal. It was pretty static. The kind of sections were able to move, and we had the odd wall that we could float. It was actually the same submarine that they used for an American film called Oh God, this is embarrassing. I'm forgetting what the film
U-505.
Matthew McConaughey's in it.
Yeah.
It's the one where they steal the Enigma machine.
Yes.
And apparently
right.
Even though he didn't really do it.
Yes. Yeah.
Yes. It was the same. It was the same submarine because they had shot it in Rome. The production designer did an amazing job. Carmine did an amazing job refitting it to look like an Italian submarine, because the Italian ones were painted white and they were wood panels and they were very, very Italian and very fancy.
You mean the interior was wood panels inside? That'd be rough.
The quarters and the officers' quarters all had fancy wood panels.
That makes sense.
Yeah. Well, that's rough though for around the water. That would be tough. So.
Yeah, that sounds like a really, really tough shoot. But wow, what a wonderful thing to be a camera operator and get your feet wet.
No, absolutely. Yeah. It was a phenomenal opportunity for me. We had a month and a half of solid Technocrane, some really intricate handheld work, lots of really complicated kind of action sequences outside the submarine. It was a lot to coordinate with a really small team, and that's kind of the thing that I keep having to remind myself of how small the team and how low the budget was. You know, it was a big film for Italy. You know, it was I think it was about a 16 million pound budget film, which for Italy, you know, for an Italian-made film is enormous. But you know, in England and America, you barely make anything for that money, and for what they were trying to do, it was, you know, really brave of Eduardo, the director, and Pio Paolo, the producer, to kind of embark on this crazy journey to go, we don't know how we're going to make this, but we're going to make it. You know,
it can happen, right?
Well,
and a lot of it depends on the crew. Like, you know, if everybody's in on it and they're like, okay, we're going to give it our best, right?
Yeah. Well, then the sad part is at nighttime you have to go back to a hotel in Venice. Boy, that's terrible.
Well, that was only where I met Ferran. He then took me down to Taranto for the which is in Puglia, which sounds fantastic, but the military dock wasn't the.
No, it wasn't the same. Okay, sorry.
But Taranto's a cool city. It's where Taranto's worth.
I stayed in Italy. I stayed in Venice for a while.
It sounds like all of Italy is not a bad thing to go see.
No.
So
actually, my favorite city, weirdly enough, was Bologna. Because it was,
love Bologna.
I loved it
Absolutely
because
adore Bologna.
it wasn't as touristy. It was old. It had all the nice. It was beautiful, and it wasn't as touristy. I really, you know, it's like the best kept secret in Italy. I really liked it there.
It's a fantastic place. I did New Year's there a few years ago, and it was the New Year's I was there. It was the first time it got so big that the people had spilled out of the main square. So I think the secret is slowly being lost, but it's a
maybe
great
so. I liked it there. Yeah.
And I've got to say, you know, you guys are saying poor me for the kind of conditions. I for most of the kind of bad conditions was in a nice warm tent on the wheels. It was mostly the assistants who were kind of under, and the poor actors who were there, particularly the boom op, who would be on the submarine all day getting absolutely battered. With
just hammered. Yeah.
Just hammered. Yeah. Not to say that I didn't get hammered occasionally, but the boom op got the brunt of it, definitely.
Yeah. So, you know, being that you started as a trainee and you mostly did second work, you did one film, a short as a first, and now you're operating and DPing. Tell us how, I mean, we sort of know it, but tell people about the politics, and everyone thinks, I want to be a camera operator, and it's just a matter of putting this here and doing that. But there's a lot more, isn't there?
Oh, yeah.
No, absolutely, and that's probably the biggest learning curve when you put aside the technical aspects of the job. You know, learning the equipment, learning to, you know, framing and what piece of equipment to use on what and what's best. Aside from that, kind of what takes up most of your time is knowing the right time to step in, knowing the right time to make a suggestion. You know, and particularly now, there's always this battle of, you know, when the video feed gets hooked up, when the rest of the set gets to see what you're doing, because there's a constant battle of, right, well, let's plug the camera in, let's get the feed up, and you always need to kind of judge it set by set to go, you know, say to the video operator, give us 5 minutes before you plug that in. You plug that camera in, the director sees it, he wants to turn over. So it's
and everybody has a video village now. So I mean, every department, like, it's crazy. So.
Yeah, Steve and I had a trick as camera assistants. Is, you know, it'd be on Techno or whatever, and they'd say, well, you know, we'd say we have to flip a lens and change a mag, and Steve would say, we'll always change the mag first and then do the lens, because the minute you put on the lens, right, then everybody can see.
They think they're ready.
Right. So what you're doing and saying is very strategic, and it takes time, right, to learn that sometimes.
There's some real dark arts. There really, really are some real dark arts.
Dark arts.
You know, absolutely. You know, how can we? You know, what can we do to get the 5 minutes to put that track down? Oh God, I need another 5 meters of track. Oh, what do we do? You know, let's talk to the art department. Maybe they need to redress that bit, or maybe we need to. You know, and that's where it comes in. You know, you need as the operator, and this was something I always learned from watching Dad, from watching Pete. Was you know, he's him, and along with a couple of others, are the kind of the last of the old school operators that would absolutely run the set. That would be the kind of the focal point. That would be, you know, particularly here in England, he's one of the last people that really works like that. And I was always, I've always, particularly now that I'm operating more, I'm inspired by that kind of being the focal point and kind of always taking it outwards. And that was, that's always a memory I've got, was watching Dad being really, really meticulous, really, pointing out every little thing and I think that's something that's being lost a little bit, that kind of that precision. And was reminded of that a lot. I shot a short on 16mm about 3 weeks ago, and it was great watching, almost watching the director kind of rethink his kind of decision at the start of the day, looking at this video tap, and then me asking me a question, going, well, what do you think of that rehearsal? And him going, I don't even know how to judge that, because he was looking at this SD video tap, and I'm saying, well, that's why I'm here, my friend.
That's right.
You have to trust me, and you have to trust the art department, and that's why we have to be ready, and that's why we've had all these conversations. It's not like we turn over and go, oh no, wait. It's we turn over and you've got to get it in the can. It was great. It was great, and by the end of the day, he was loving it. He was loving the freedom of it. Because I was suggesting to him, I was saying, no, move away from this monitor, go and sit by camera, and look at what your actors are doing.
Yes, exactly.
Watch what they're doing. Trust your operator. Trust me that I'm getting the exposure right. Trust the operator that he's framing it right. And it was great. He really enjoyed it with him. That's
great. I think everyone should start out just doing some film because, you learn to be sniper-like. Like, do I need this shot? I only have so much film and, everything that you're talking about because you had to trust your operator. What if that tap goes down? Are you going to shut down?
There was a time when there wasn't a tap, right?
Right, but that's my point. If the tap shuts down, if the video just goes out, you can still shoot the movie.
What?
Right? Even on digital, right? You can still do it. I know, it seems odd.
I did a film with Costa Gavras, one of my favorite directors of all time, and he always put himself right next to the camera. Like, even if we had video assist, he was right there. And he wanted to see the actors. He never sat by the monitor ever, and I really enjoyed that. But now the other issue with being an operator, is the fact that you're dealing with, as a camera operator, you're kind of in between the director and the DP. And sometimes those instructions get muddled or mixed up. I know I've had that experience where you have to figure out who you're answering to. So
absolutely, yeah.
Has that been an issue ever with you? So.
Yeah, I mean, it comes up in different ways almost on every project. It's not like it's not necessarily a loyalty thing. It's just a kind of practical thing sometimes that one person says one thing, another person says another. I've had occasions where the director and the DP just don't speak, and you are in the middle. You are the absolutely.
Tell me about it. I mean,
everybody, right?
I mean, in my career, which lasted 40 years, I was fired once as a camera operator because the DP and the director sat in different tents, never talked to each other. Before we'd roll, the director would say, well, Steve, I want you to do this. I was wearing headsets listening to the DP. He would say, no, I want you to do this. I have another camera doing this. After the take, the director would look at me and go like, what happened? What was that? I lasted 2 weeks. But I learned, I should have known better. I should have taken the headsets off and listened to the director. He's the boss, ultimately. And I learned from that. And the guy that replaced me, we informed him, get rid of those headsets. I know your DP is your boss, but when the director tells you to do something, that's what you do.
So how do you work those situations, Guido?
I had a very, very similar situation on a job recently. I could go, thankfully we didn't have headsets, thankfully.
Yeah, that was a killer, yes.
Yeah, both fantastic tools and sometimes incredibly restrictive. Something that you'd think would aid in communication actually sometimes takes away from communication because everyone thinks you can just do it in the moment rather than talking about things before. Yeah, absolutely. Right. No, but I did a job recently that I could probably go an entire day without talking to the DP. I was on an additional camera. I wasn't on the A camera. And I could probably go an entire day without speaking to him. I would just liaise with the director. The director would always be wanting to throw an extra camera in. And the DP wasn't necessarily always happy about that. And at the start of the job, I was just kind of going, well, you guys fight it out and then I'll put the camera in if you want. Or, always doing the best to help the DP out as much as I could. Always going, well, well, I can't go here because then that light's going to be in short, or I'm going to cross
Right.
this over, or whatever. And but you know, as you say, Steve, the director's the boss. So sometimes you have to, and I don't know whether this is a good thing or a bad thing. I think you know, particularly now with digital, I think the director's probably got more power than he or she used to, given that you know, everyone can see a monitor, and things have to, you know, things are quicker nowadays. I think you have to, you know, particularly on TV schedules, things are just sometimes you're expected to just get up and go, and there's no two ways about it. So particularly as, say, a B or a C camera operator, it can be very difficult to tread that line of, well, the director and the producers want this extra camera, but the DP doesn't necessarily want it, and it's again finding, and there's no single answer. It's the different personalities. It's the different, but it's also, you know, I ended up in a place of kind of trust on this job, where the DP trusted me to just kind of insert myself in the right place and not, you know, not screw him, so to speak.
Well, that's a big deal. But that's a big deal to have. That's a huge deal.
Yeah.
But now,
Absolutely. Yeah.
But
now,
you know,
I only ever really hear from him when he was unhappy, which was fine. You know.
But I mean, now the issue I had too was I had the headsets, but I didn't have a microphone where I could answer him and tell him, oh, by the way, the director wants me to. I could never answer. But now the other, I had a thought process about that, and I lost it. But go ahead. Sorry.
well, you know what? I was in one situation where I had the, you know, same thing like you, director, and we were talking to another friend of ours, Steadicam operator, and he said, well, one day he goes, I just got so fed up. I went, director, meet the DP. You should talk about this.
Yeah.
And I was like, well, yeah, but he was, you know, he's a seasoned guy and he could do that.
Yeah, he could do that. Yeah.
But the other part of that is, you know, if I was a DP, I would be thinking, you know, that B camera guy is just trying to do his best. He's thrown into it by the director or producer. I got to help him out to help me out. I mean, that's my thinking, but we know that that's not always the ego and what happens. Yeah.
Well, I mean, the other issue now that, I mean, before I retired, that there's a lot of really young directors that sadly don't know very much, you know, and it's pretty frustrating. It's like, I mean, the last job I ever worked on, I mean, even the DP was like a kid, and I remember asking if they had wheels on the set, and I wanted to use the wheels, and he walked by and looked at me. He said, "I didn't even know we had those." this is the DP, and he goes, "You know, I never learned how to use those." And he walked away, and I thought, you know, like maybe you should have done that, but he didn't even know we had them. So
Yeah. I mean,
stuff like that.
And Guido, so I'm sure you've either had it or you will have had more time on a set and more experience than directors and or DPs that you might be working with.
Oh, I mean,
Yeah,
absolutely.
that too.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, even in my, you know, short career, I've experienced that a fair bit, especially making the kind of lower budget shorts and commercials and content now that we do lots of. Most of the time I find myself that I'm almost the most experienced person on set, and it can be a frustration when you're doing, say, I don't know, a short, for example, and you have to spend so much of time teaching.
Yeah. Right.
Yes.
You know,
Yes.
it's
Yeah.
but then again, that's the trade-off, you know. That's and sometimes that's great, having that kind of, you know, bright-eyed, bushy-tailed look at things, and sometimes it's great because then you go, oh, okay, well maybe, you know, 9 times out of 10 you walk into a scene, you know, you read the sides in the morning, you go, well, it's a wide there, it's over shoulders here, it's a pick up of this, and you move on. Where someone who hasn't done that before is going to walk in and go, well, what if we do it from over here? And you go, well, that's quite
Right.
fun, yeah, all right. And then you regret it down the line, and you go, "Oh crap! Now we've got to turn around and like all this."
Yeah.
But, oh well, that's all part of the fun, you know.
Yeah, I mean, and that's part of what we also teach in our seminar is the fact that, you know, yeah, you have all these ideas and you want to shoot this thing, but have the right people also in the right areas. Like we often find that they have one grip and one electrician. It's like, well, maybe if you had 3 grips and 3 electricians, we'd move faster because we have that support system, right? Because grip, electric, all that is support and helps make everything move and go faster. And you're right. We have found in our own, you know, helping people out that it's hard when you have to teach and try to keep that train going as well.
Keep the train going is right. Plus, you know, the whole idea of getting people now crews that respect that. You know, like there's so many young people that, you know, the set etiquette has fallen apart. Like people don't always respect that order. there is an order of things that was established a long time ago. Sometimes that breaks down and becomes complicated. And you as an operator or DP, you're the one that has to deal with that. So like somehow. So.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, at the end of the day, you're kind of responsible for what you're pointing the camera at, and you're certainly responsible for what's in and out of frame. And if the wrong thing's in frame, I always think I mean, if it's right or not, but I think it's a useful approach to always think that the buck kind of stops with you as the operator. If you've missed something, it's on you. If you've not spotted a kind of. Obviously everyone on set should be working towards that, and you've got other people who are obviously in charge of that, the DP, the director of continuity, and everyone's in charge of their own bit. But I like to approach it as the buck stops with me. I'm the one pointing the camera. So.
And it does, and it should. I mean, and it does, and it should. Sometimes I'm saying there's some people that don't always respect that. Everybody's like you say, everybody's got their video monitor now, and they all want their 2 cents, so I can, write down to.
It's a funny thing with the video monitor thing, and I always find that somewhat frustrating on lower budget projects, because it sounds like I'm moaning about everything, but I'm not.
No, you're not. No, you're telling the truth.
No, it doesn't sound like that at all.
But it's an interesting one that you'd think with the proliferation of monitors everywhere that. Particularly now, with streaming, you can get a Teradek whatever that can stream to everyone's phone, so everyone can have a stream on their phones. Little things like resetting props or resetting a gag, or the little things that get missed, and that's linking that back to something that we were talking about before is that kind of proactiveness. That proactiveness should be made easier by all these tools that we have.
You're right. That's a good point. It should be made easier.
Yeah, and I think sometimes that's something that gets lost sometimes in the ease of digital, that you just go, oh, well, fix it later, or do this, or everyone's looking at a monitor, and it's like, well, no, are you looking at a monitor? You make sure that your bit's not there. And there's a funny dichotomy of the kind of the fear sometimes that film instills, that you have to make sure that everything's on point, that you're coming in and you're dressing an area, and it's not necessarily, for example, and you're making sure that you've got buffer zones, that maybe the camera will stop further left or stop further right, where sometimes with digital people go, oh, well, that's the frame, it goes from here to here, oh, but now suddenly the director wants to look up there, and oh god, that's not lit, and oh god, that's not dressed, and sometimes you're thinking smaller where you should be thinking bigger.
Right. But but this is also the beauty of having been on those big movies as an assistant, is seeing that, hearing that. And as Steve and I say, you steal with your eyes, and you listen, and you gather, but you are also learning what not to do as well, right? You see things and you're like, okay, note to self, I'm not doing that again, right?
Absolutely.
Okay, so one of the other things about operating and what you've been doing is working with actors. Do you, especially in this last movie, can you discuss a little bit about how your interaction was with the actors and how you work with them?
Absolutely, yeah. So I had a bit of an odd background. I did a fair amount of acting as a teenager. I was in the National Youth Theatre and did the odd short film, which I hope are buried, that no one will ever see. But yeah, and I think that's given me a certain kind of sensibility, I think, to kind of what actors go through. I mean, it's funny. I think they did a. I was watching an English comedy television show last night, and they were kind of a quiz show, and they were saying that people think that acting is the best job in the world, and God, I wouldn't wish it on my worst enemy. It's such a hard profession, before, during, and after. It is really difficult, and the ability to act and turn it on with everything that goes on around you on a film set is extraordinary. So I think there has to be there's a certain amount of give and take, and I'm expecting an actor. I would expect an actor that if we put a mark down, they should be able to hit that within reason, the same amount that I should be able to hit a frame. And I have to say that's something that I've found increasingly difficult, is particularly with young actors, the kind of realisation that the ability to hit marks and kind of understand blocking and understand camera, I think, is something that's being lost. And I hope that drama schools begin to teach it a bit more. You know, the understanding the difference between an 85 and a 28. That you know, on an 85 you can't be standing up and sitting down really quickly, or it's never going to happen. You know, I can do my best, but it's never going to happen.
But like you said, it's great when you have an actor that understands that.
Absolutely,
it makes all the difference in the world.
Which is why I will be forever grateful to Pier Francesco Favino, who is the lead on Comandante. He was absolutely different class, fantastic with marks. And I remember we had a day one. We were, my first shot on this film was like a 200-meter backwards walk with a Ronin coming, you know, as they're singing this song, and they come up, and it's the first time they get on the submarine, and then we land, and then we get into a big speech that he gives them getting on the submarine, and you know, we did a practice with a finder, and we kind of found the positions, and I put marks down for me, and I put marks down for him, and he kind of gave me this kind of very Italian kind of look that I don't need that mark. And I said, it's more for me as a reference.
For me, yeah.
I don't need that mark. And I said, well, you know, it's really important. At the end, he said, you tell me where I'll be. You tell me where you want me, and I'll be there.
Yeah. And the good ones can do that. So.
And full credit to him.
Yeah.
He was wherever I needed him.
Yeah.
He was there every time. And when the odd, 1 out of 100 he missed it, he'd always go, I was in the wrong place. I'm really sorry. And he would make it known. He would go, not a camera. That was my fault.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah. That's a big deal.
That's great.
Jack Nicholson was like that. He didn't want the marks. He'd say, I want them. But
Wow.
and he was there most of the time. But I mean, as an operator, my favorite experience was Keanu Reeves. He really understood what the relationship between him and I. Like, it got to be where him and I we would talk more to each other than anybody else. Like,
Absolutely.
we had this thing, and he got it right away, which helped me a lot.
Which I think is really important. That connection between the camera department and the actors, and particularly with your second AC who's putting marks down. And in Italy, it's the grips that do it. It's a bit of a different system, but it's that kind of communication. The Italian system is very different. The grips do the clapperboard, and the grips do the marks.
I did a film in Hungary, and it was the same way. In fact, I was the first assistant. At the end of the day, the slate was gone, and I said, "Well, what happened to the slate?" And they said, "Well, the grips keep that." And I go, "What are you talking about?" The slate was there from day one, but you get used to it. So, but that was in Budapest.
I don't know if I am used to it. It still blows my mind to this day.
Yeah. But I mean, the English system would be like us, right? They didn't do it, but in Hungary, the grips did a lot of the camera stuff. So.
Well, it's about adapting, right? You
adapt to it.
You just have to do it. But it's that's one thing that we try to teach Guido in one of our seminars is acting for camera, and it's just to let actors know, that there is a technique. There are things that you can learn to help the whole process in the situation out, and do for fewer takes, right? Save that energy, and also when to give the energy. Am I going to do it on the wide shot, or am I going to wait till we're here, and we're closer? So that is indeed something that we talk about, because I also have friends that are firsting and doing things, and they're like, God, the operator wanted us on a 200, with a guy on a boat, and he goes, I didn't. So it's also, as an operator, okay, working with your actor, and then giving other people a chance, like your first, to be able to get a good shot, right? Because it's all part of it. If it could be a great shot, but if it's not in focus because he doesn't have a chance in hell in getting it, and the actor's wasting their time, so the set etiquette of the actor and the acting techniques of how to work with you and how to work with everyone right there around that bubble of a camera is a big deal.
Well, and you mentioned before the fact that having them know what sizes are and stuff. So we teach that, what a cowboy is and what a choker is. So if somebody says that, they understand what the situation is. Like you said, somebody's going to stand up in a close up. It's helpful if they understand what that means.
I always think it's kind of a bit of a triangle, really. It's kind of the actor, the operator, and the focus puller, and it's that communication between the three. And I always think it's something that I was always very careful and very conscious to do when I first started operating. And I think it's the quickest way to spot a new or an inexperienced operator is if they move the camera, if they do something else, do they turn around to their focus puller and let them know? Do they, that's something particularly with digital and film that you've changed the offset on the slider and you've come back 6 inches. Do you let them know? Do you say to the grip, we're going to push in an extra 6 inches? Do you turn around to your focus puller and say, look, we've come in? And it's such a quick way, such a little thing, but it makes such a big difference.
Nowadays, you got the assistants. I don't know if they do it there, but sometimes they're sitting in another room in front of a monitor instead of being next to you. It's like, even if I was a focus puller today, even with the good monitors, I'd still want to be next to the camera so I can see actors subtly. These guys sit in another room. It's like,
or how about, as an operator, I'm seeing something and I'm looking over and I can whisper, I'm going, look at that. I'm going to go back to that guy back there or something. Even a beat camera. How many times you get those shots and you're working with somebody. I learned that from Steve and a camera operator named Garrett. We were doing beat camera shots on a film and they were constantly communicating. Okay, I'm going to pan over. I'm going to grab that guy back there. Okay, great. You ready? And here, it's that communication. And when you're somewhere else, how do you have those little conversations that make it look like gold? Right.
I mean, do you have the assistants doing that where they're away from the camera now? Is that happening there too?
It is happening. I mean, on the obviously on Comandante on the interiors, it was he was always in a different room. Danilo who did the interiors did a phenomenal job. There was the odd occasion where if we were in say the main command center that was a bit of a wider room, like he'd be next to me with a.
Well, that was a situation where that the situation dictated it. But I mean, there are guys now I know that they're never by the camera. They're always. I don't care how.
There's people who these days just pull off a monitor and still have a cine tape or a cine RT to give them some idea, and who will just sit there all day and I don't know how they do it. It's incredible that they still seem to have the same reflexes. I mean,
a lot of times they don't do it though, and you can see it. I mean, I see more and more films now where it's like whoops, like oh my God, there'll be people that are soft, and it's always on the little subtleties, but it's because they're not watching the actor; they're watching a screen, and they're late. So I see that a lot.
I also think that's a symptom of the kind of fashion of shooting wide open on large formats.
Oh, that too, yeah.
That's become very, very fashionable. And,
yes.
And I didn't focus pull for very long, thankfully. I think I focus pulled for about 4 months, maybe not even that, maybe 3 months.
Good.
I got very, very lucky with some operating and shooting opportunities, and even in the short time I was doing it, it was very
25.
difficult.
I did it for 25 years.
Yeah, it is challenging, but again, too, if you have a good operator first assistant situation where there is communication, it does make a difference. Film, digital, it doesn't matter. And
no, absolutely.
I remember having a situation once when it was a handheld shot, and I was a focus puller, and I remember it was a really tight shot. And I remember the operator, if I was soft, he would find it. Like by there's this guy, Jimmy Blanford. And I would later, I said, what were you doing? He said, well, I was putting it in focus. But he'd subtly move it back and forth to find the focus if I wasn't there. It was great.
Right. Fantastic.
It was great.
Fantastic.
Yeah. Well, Guido, our time is just about up, but I had a great conversation, and I'd love to hear more. And hopefully, the strike and everything will get back together, and we can maybe catch you after your next film. I mean, maybe you're going to be DPing by then.
Well, let me say this: is there anything important that you think that we missed that you want to add to this?
Oh, I don't think so. It felt like a complete whirlwind. I can't remember anything I said. I hope I didn't embarrass myself too much.
No.
I hope I embarrassed Dad. I hope that happened. But
No.
No, damn it.
I was thinking that today that he'd be we did this and he'd be standing there over your shoulder watching.
Yeah, just sort of doing one of these.
To see how it
Out
happened.
the way. Right. And we got through that whiskey waking up. That was that.
Yeah, that's good.
Good
Cool.
job.
No, I don't think. I think we covered everything really. I hope the answers were satisfactory.
Yeah. I mean, your answers were great. I apologize. Sometimes I interrupt when people start talking. I start thinking about what they're saying and I interrupt. I apologize for that.
No,
I think,
no, it's great.
we all love this business because we are in it and have been in it. And, I think that's part of it because, Steve is older generation. I'm, one removed and you're in the younger. But you can see that you're having the same experiences and same things that we do. So that part hasn't changed, right? We can all talk the same language. We can all say, oh, yes, been through that. And the fact that you were brought up old school, but now have, work in the new digital format and see the benefits of both.
Well, that's what I was saying. It helped. The nepotism part of it helped your career because you learned from it. I know some guys that are born into it and they don't think that they know anything. But, but you learn from it, which is a big deal.
You've excelled with it, and that's the great thing.
I mean, there is obviously the flip side of the really quite nasty bad sides of the nepotism, the kind of the entitlement and
that's
not having to work and kind of stuff.
I've seen that.
But the one thing I would say about that is that I do think there's a ceiling there. That, you're only going to get so far. Is the one thing I do, believe in on my good days. The cream rises in our industry. The kind of the best of the best do get there eventually. It might take some people longer. That I think if you get your head down and you work hard, I think you are able to find a good career in what we do. And at the end of the day, something I always try and come back to is that all of us got into film because we like films. We all got into it because we like making films.
Exactly.
And that's always the thing to remember, I think.
It's exactly right. So.
Yep.
I'm going to excuse myself.
Okay, excuse yourself.
Thank you, Guido. Okay.
Thanks, Steve.
Lovely to see you, Steve.
Yeah.
Sorry.
No, I'm sorry.
All right. Steve, take your headphones off because I think I know where he's going.
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, okay. Well, Guido, hey, thanks. It was so good talking to you.
Good. I hope it's useful for you.
Oh, this has been fantastic. So I usually say this and I can't wait. I'd love to have you back to hear about what you're doing. Hopefully, when everything gets back going and continued success, because you're a great guy and you're very talented, and I wish you the best.
Likewise.
Okay. All right. So I usually say this to Steve, but Guido, I'll say it to you because you know what it means, and I'm going to say, hey, we've checked the gate, and the gate is good. Thank you for listening to this Film 5.0 podcast. You can find us on Instagram at The Film 5.0, Facebook, The Film 5.0, and thefilm50.com. So please like, follow, and share. And you can find us on wherever you get your podcast. And again, we'd like to thank our guest, Guido Cavaciuti. And no doubt he's going to be BSc, ASC, and all those other wonderful things. So from Steve and I, thank you so much, and thanks for listening to the Film 5.0 podcast.